There we go. So, welcome everybody. We're going to go into the rest of lesson 18 tonight. We were speaking on the Spiritist teachings of trials and tribulations last week. It sounds very ominous, almost biblical, and I cringed when I first heard about it. But the Spiritist view, once you unravel that a little bit and you can get behind the 18th or the 19th century, should I say, wording, people in those days, they just wrote like that. They just wrote. It was a little bit serious, and we've got to reinterpret the wording for our modern world. So basically, let's give a summary on what we did last week, just so that we can catch ourselves up, and then we'll finish that lecture off. Here we go. And share. Trials and atonements. That's what we were doing. So we remember that we went into an understanding that by trials we mean spiritual challenges, spiritual hardships. Why do people struggle? Why do people suffer in this world? And we kind of looked at, the idea of suffering in the life of a human being or any other incarnate spirit who has come in a human body. We've learned that Spiritism gives us a view of, and it's a boxed view. It's for our human intellectual minds to grasp that there are different planes of existence and different worlds, and each world, each plane of existence offers us different opportunities to learn, different opportunities to grow and to evolve. At the very base, there are the primitive worlds, the primitive planes that offer very simple, instinctual based lessons and learnings that don't require huge amount of knowledge, huge amount of intellect. They require learning from the instinct, because at that stage the spirit is still very young. Then we learned that there are the worlds of what we call the worlds or the planes of existence, of tests and atonements and trials. And planet Earth, our earthly existence, is one of these places. And we kind of grappled with the idea of good versus evil and what that could look like, not from that idea of the judgment, because if we think about it, anyone is evil when we disagree with them. If you've got two armies fighting against one another, they both see each other as the evil side. So in Spiritism, evil is defined as when we go against the divine laws of nature, when we go against the spiritual progression of nature. Not the Ten Commandments laws, okay? These are not the laws we're talking about here. We're talking about going against the cosmic laws of this universe. But modern Spiritist teaching has taken the word evil away and replaced that word with like misaligned or immoral actions. We must remember that the texts were translated from French, the Allan Kardec texts, and when we look back at it now, it's not, evil is not the right word. So we can kind of think of these teachings as being moral versus immoral. Is a soul walking a path of virtue and morality, of goodness and progression, or are they purposefully trying to bring destruction, segregation, and pain into the world? Whatever you want to call that. And whether we like it or not, planet Earth is full of it, full of that. Okay, and I gave a little demonstration here of how some of the nastiness happens on our planet and the goodness. We have both. This is a planet of extreme polarity. We have the extreme bad or negative aspect, the immoral side of humanity and of the world. And then we've got this absolutely beautiful part. So we live in a polarized plane. And we also learned that in these planes, like on Earth, selfishness really predominates. It's still the highest, the biggest thing. People checking in with self inclined motivations all the time. Then once we can, as a soul, transcend beyond the need to gravitate to these worlds, these realms, these planes of existence, we then go to the worlds of regeneration. The worlds of regeneration are places whereby the soul can rest and recover after all of its hard work. And it's like the summer holiday after a year of studying and learning. Now we get to rest, we get to relax, and the soul can find more peace in these places. Very often, by the time a soul gets to that place, it's been through so much that it needs the opportunity to rest and regenerate. Please remember also that firstly, the images that I've got here, they're just my own, I just found images that kind of felt like they matched what I'm talking about. These are not actual images of places that we go to. Um, and remember also that the spirits said in the channelings that it's it's much more complex and varied than this in the actual spiritual realms. These are just models that human beings can use just to wrap our head around something that can't really be fully understood by the intellect. The intellect cannot understand fully the spiritual. Then we have other planes of existence that are assigned to the more highly evolved spirits of this world, the guides, the mentors, those ascended ones, whose responsibility it is no longer to focus on themselves and their spiritual teachings or their spiritual learnings. They don't have to worry about their spiritual progression as much. They are more assigned to help others through their spiritual growth and progress. So it's like we get to that point, when you get to maybe, let's say, matric, and then maybe the teachers say to a few people, you've kind of done really well and you've excelled. So now you will be the ones who guard and guide the other generations, whether you call them the prefects or the mentors or whatever they are. They're assigned to help others. So, and then finally, we have the celestial or the divine planes of existence. And those are allocated to the beings who are who's responsible for the much bigger picture, the execution of the divine plan in this universe, and ensuring that the universe operates in harmony and in peace. And every soul is on a journey of growth towards and upwards through these levels. Every single soul has this opportunity to progress. We spoke a little bit about karma, but we have spoken of karma a lot more before. What we were talking about here in this trials and atonement section was that what we call atonement is basically what we're saying, meaning when we say we need to make right, we need to clear up our karmic slate, we need to wipe the slate clean. All right. And when I was in India, for the first time, when we visited the ashram that we take groups to every year, um, one of the activities that you do every day in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in yoga, and I'm sure some other traditions, is what is called karma yoga or seva, which means selfless service, giving back. And it usually consists of something menial, like cleaning toilets or sweeping floors. All right. And the lady who runs the program at the ashram, Lalita ji, somebody said to her, you know, I, this is too much for me to sweep all these floors. And she said, yes, what a great opportunity to clear your karma. What a great opportunity to clear your mind, to sweep clean your past. And this is what Lord Krishna speaks of in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that in any moment, in any action, human beings can energetically clear our baggage, our karma, our all the stuff that we have gone through and inflicted on others. So, we can think of small little situations that could help balance out the karma. Um, but we are responsible for our trials, and we are responsible for our atonements. Spiritism doesn't teach what Christianity teaches, whereby you go to God and you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm a sinner, please forgive me," and it's all good and well. Or you go to your confession. There is a space for that, right? There is definitely a space to speak to the divine, to unload and unburden our hearts. But that in itself doesn't clear the slate. We have to actually go into the world and do right. We have to go and, with our actions, make up for the imbalances. And sometimes those imbalances, if we don't make them up ourselves, the universe, through its own laws, will inflict a balancing act upon your life so that you can go through an experience that helps you to learn to do better. So we'll get to that just now, but I just want you to know that this is what atonement means. It means clearing the karmic slate. It's our payback. We also learned last time that trials are necessary for our moral and spiritual progress. That if we don't have trials, we only have stagnation. Um, so we also learned that there's two ways that trials can be inflicted onto us. When I say trials, I mean any kind of spiritual struggle or the struggle in the life. One is trials that we choose. So maybe you say, I want to go and I want to become the world's best cyclist, or I want to go hike up Mount Kilimanjaro. That is a self inflicted struggle that you are putting on yourself. You're choosing to undergo that suffering and that struggle, but you're doing it for a greater good. You're doing it to grow, you're doing it to have an experience, you're doing it to evolve, and you know that struggling is necessary to get there. It's not going to happen easily. Then the other trials are the ones that are inflicted upon us, either through life circumstances. Maybe you live in a country that's full of poverty or war. Or maybe it's through karmic balancing, such as if you were an abuser in a previous life, you might be the victim of abuse in this life. That is not punishment. That is the universe's way of giving us perspective. It's perspective. It's not God saying, "Oh, you were the abuser last time. Ha 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 ha. Now let's see what happens to you in this life." That's not how this works. If we choose through our free will to be an abuser in the one existence, then the universe will say to us through its cosmic laws, "All right, you need to see this from all perspectives." And that's how we grow spiritually. As a soul, we need to experience all perspectives of existence. We need to be the abused, we need to be the abuser, we need to be the mother, the father, the child. We need to be the victim, and we need to be the victor. It is in that way that we can completely have a full rounded awareness of the spiritual existence. And so sometimes our guides and mentors will guide us through processes that they know will be helpful to us, even if those are not always fun, right? When we were in grade one, your teacher makes you write those letters 100 times: A, B, 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 B. And you think, why am I doing this? But they know that through this struggling, you're going to learn how to write and maybe one day become an author or, whatever. So we had a little look there at when we speak of the word expiation, it means to work off and to clean the karmic slate, to clear our conscience. Okay, and we're going to look at these three things tonight. We're going to look at expiation, we're going to look at atonement and reparation. How do we make right? So that's really where we're focusing. I spoke about that Egyptian, weighing of the soul. And really, just to summarize that again, this Egyptian myth says that when we die, our soul is weighed against a feather. And we can see here in this picture, we can see the goddess on the right, Ma'at, the goddess of justice. And we can see Thoth or Tahuti, the ibis-headed god. He's recording. He puts all the record into the Akasha, into the Akashic records, all record of existence. And we can see Anubis, the god of the death, doing the weighing. And we can see Horus over there bringing his wisdom. Now, what this means is that when we die, we become, it's not the gods who judge us. We self-reflect. We judge ourselves against our own actions. We weigh up. We have the opportunity to sit in the council with our spiritual mentors and overview that existence. Where could I have done better? Where did I fail? Where is there room for improvement? What perspectives did I not gain in that life? What would I like to still learn? Okay, I really didn't get this right. Or wow, I really nailed that. And so we self-evaluate spiritually. And we do this with the guidance of spiritual mentors, those who have worked with us, walked with us throughout that life, and maybe other lives as well. The guides are not just there once off, they might walk with you for several incarnations. Every spiritual path talks about the same thing, the same purpose behind reincarnation, the same purpose of having guiding spirits. Spiritism has just distilled it into an almost academic scientific study without the cultural baggage and influence that can come with these things. So that's why Spiritism is nice, because it cleans up a lot of the teachings, and then you can plug them into whatever the cultural context is that you like to work through. So this is where we left off last week. There are three aspects of going through trials and atonements that we need to look at for spiritual growth. The first step, and by the way, these three steps are also applied in good psychotherapy, and I'll show you why. The first step, okay, these are these loaded words, repentance. Okay, so don't get caught up in the jargon, don't get caught up in the words. In this context, repentance doesn't mean falling before God and repenting that you're a dark and evil and wicked sinner. That's not what it means. Repentance in this context means owning up to our stuff. We own up to where we screwed up, where we messed up. We've got to step up. We've got to own it. We've got to say, I wronged you. I hurt you. My words caused you pain. Or I stole your opportunity. Or I stood in the way of your joy. So we own up. We step up. Now, this may be done with the person, or it may be done without the person. Okay, this is a spiritual thing. So, yes, I think that if we have the opportunity to go and stand in front of the person that we've wronged and own up to it, that in itself would clear a lot of the conscience and release that pressure. But unfortunately, not everyone is open to receiving that well, you know. So sometimes we cannot do it with the person that we've hurt, or maybe they've passed over, or maybe they live far away. So then what we do is we do it spiritually, or we do it with a life coach, or we do it with a therapist, or with a priest. And we just sit with someone who can help us process to unburden the soul. All of this is about unburdening the soul. So we'll look at them in more detail. So step one is own up to it. Repentance. I hurt you. In Mankind Project, we've got a process called Aina and Ouch. Aina and Ouch is I caused an Aina on you. I hurt you. And Ouch is the Aina was caused on me. I was the one who was hurt. And we go through this process of when in our lives have we caused the Aina? When have we caused the pain? And when in our lives have we been a victim of Ouch, of the soul? And looking through both lenses, because we all do as human beings cause a little bit of pain and experience a little bit of pain. So a nice process to kind of go through with your loved ones is even, I realize that I caused you an ouch. I caused you an ana. I'm sorry for that. I hurt you. The second step spiritually to help us to release all of this spiritual weight is called expiation. Expiation means that once we own up to it, we need to clear the emotional charge. Owning up to it is one thing, but now it needs to be released. It needs to be cleared from us. That could be done in various different ways. We'll look at in a moment. I'm going to go into each one in a moment. And then the third is reparation, which is to make it right. We've actually, so now you've owned up to it, right? You've cleared the emotional charge. That's lightened the load a little bit. It's lightened the spiritual burden. But we still need to create balance. We still need to make it right. So if I stole this pen from Brendan, and now I'm being burdened spiritually by this, I can feel it's weighing me down, it's holding me back. And I'm guilty and I'm ashamed, and I can't talk to him anymore because I've stolen his pen. The first thing that I would need to do is I would need to own up to that. Brendan, I stole your pen. Okay. And the second step is that I would have to say, Brendan, are you able to forgive me for that? Now, no, he says no, he's not going to forgive me. So, so there's two things that can happen here. One is the person may forgive you. If they do, it lightens both of your souls immediately. The person who is doing the forgiving, can I tell you, their spirit grows in that process because they've learned the art of forgiveness. And you've actually provided them with an opportunity to grow. And you who has been forgiven, you feel the relief. If the person does not forgive you, they are stunting their own spiritual progress. Maybe Brendan can only forgive me in 3 years or 10 years, or maybe he never forgives me. But that's his own spiritual issue. In that moment, I need to forgive myself. I need to release myself from the guilt and the shame and the blame. So we are not being held back by other people. Okay, that's not what it is. But there is definitely something there in that exchange that does release us and frees us. Sometimes people can't receive what they need from the person. Maybe the perpetrator really is an awful person. Maybe we can't talk to them and offer forgiveness or ask for forgiveness. And in those situations, we can do it in internal processes like meditation. We can do it there. NLP, hypnotherapy, we can do it there. Now, the third thing is Brendan's forgiven me, but there's still an imbalance in the universe. I need to give him back his pen, or I need to buy him a new pen. Or maybe Brendan says, I don't need a pen, Ryan, but you know what? Go and buy three pens for the primary school down the road to make it right. It doesn't have to come from him. Maybe it has nothing to do with pens. Maybe the next day I just go and I bake a loaf of bread for a sick friend and I take it to them and I go, this is my way of doing something good to make up. As long as we consciously are trying to make right in the universe, that's what matters. That's how the laws are balanced out. Not easy. Not easy. So let's go to them now. I said we'll go into them a little bit more. Yes, Marita, paying it forward. 100% paying it forward. Repentance, okay, so to be aware that you made a mistake. And by the way, for this to actually take effect spiritually, you have to truly be sorry. It can't just be from here. You know, like when you say to like an 11-year-old, are you sorry? And they go, yeah, I'm sorry. That's not the real sorry that we're looking for. This has got to truly be a spiritual thing. Okay. This talk is about trials and tribulations. We are talking about how to recover from trials and how to stop trials from happening in our life over and over and over that are caused by our own actions. As I said, this can be done on the spiritual plane at any time. It doesn't always necessarily have to be done in person. If you have the tools, you can sit in meditation and you can call the soul of that person to you. And you can have this whole process with them there. You can even call your guides. You can stand in your circle of excellence, as Eva likes to powerfully create this beautiful circle of power around us, you know. You can stand in sacred space. I had to do this with people in my life who I couldn't speak to physically about it. But you can call their spirit and you can ask their guides to assist you to do this process. Maybe you were a terrible son or a terrible dad or whatever, and you just want to get some relief, but your kids don't speak to you anymore. So this can be done in this way. The intention is the most important thing. It is knowing that our actions have hurt someone, and that is the first step. The intention is everything. The next thing on expiation, once we've owned up, as I said, we need to clear. We need to do the clearing. We speak of cleansing a lot, you know, in the spiritual world, but what does that actually mean? It means an unburdening, a releasing of the stuff that's weighing us down, the negativity that's holding us back. So when Catholics go to confession, it is a very powerful, if done correctly, it is a very powerful healing process. And it's not about the priest, and it's not actually about the religion. It's about you being able to speak to someone who doesn't have a face and just say, I hurt my wife, I did this, I did that, and unburdening it from yourself, releasing it from yourself. And then normally they'll say, okay, now go and do something to make it right. But as I say, if it's not done out of real intention, it's not going to work. We can't just do it because we think, oh, well, let me go and confess and then tomorrow I'll do it again. That's not the same thing. Okay. They're doing it differently. They're doing it because they're scared God's going to punish them. But with those of us who see God very differently, God is not judging us at all. We judge us. We sit with that guilt. We sit with that pain. And we're the only ones who can relieve ourselves of it. In Mexico, yes, Marita, journaling is great for this kind of thing. Journaling is great because it's an outpouring of that energy, and it's a very nice way of processing as well. Just processing the emotions. Um, there's many modalities that can help with this. Like in hypnotherapy, in some of the regression work we do, we take the inner child or the part of us that was hurt back to the perpetrator, and we confront the perpetrator in hypnotherapy, and we ask why they did what they did, and we ask the client, are they prepared to forgive the perpetrator or not? Did the perpetrator do what they were doing out of ignorance, or was it to cause pain? And it's all about getting perspective. The more perspective we get, the more compassionate we become. So there's wonderful ways that this work can be processed. In a Mexican shamanic tradition, they've got something called a plática. It literally means to speak, to unburden the soul. So what they will do is they will just sit and someone will drum behind you, or a circle of drumming is around you, and you just open your mouth and you talk. But you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, maybe for half an hour, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. Everything that needs to come out, it comes out. It has to come out. It has to be unburdened. People might say, I hate you, you moron, you bully, I wish you would burn, I wish you would die. Whatever it is, it needs to come out. It needs to be unburdened because inside it's causing sickness. And then while they're doing that, they're burning herbs and they're purifying the space around that person. Or they might say, I was a terrible mother, I didn't know what I was doing, please forgive me, I hurt you, I did you wrong, whatever it is. In yoga, we call the throat chakra Vishuddhi, which means to purify. And so there is something about the verbalization, the actual speaking, that purifies what was sitting on the heart. The heart is below the throat. So in order for the heart to be purified, we can communicate it. This helps us to unburden the soul. And I think that is why therapy is helpful to an extent. Traditional therapy is helpful in the unburdening of the soul, but it's missing some elements. Then in animistic cultures, the shaman or the medicine person or the sangoma or the druid or the witch, whatever, will take you down to the river after this is done and wash you and pour herbs over you and put smoke around you. And this is ways of energetically helping you, symbolically, energetically, to release that stuff. Spiritism doesn't require any of that. It says we can do it all without the props. We can do it without the tools. But this is ways cultures have created their own healing processes. If we do not unburden the soul, if we do not clear our conscience, the universal laws will place us into situations whereby we have to work it off. Whereby we have to work it off. So, maybe you were a dog abuser in a previous life, and you come back in this life, and you have no limbs, you can't walk anymore because you were the one hurting animals previously. This is not the universe or God punishing you. This is giving you the opportunity to see the other perspective and to work it off. This clears the emotional charge. And nobody likes hearing that, because they say, well, it wasn't me doing it. It was that passed me. But that was you, unfortunately. That was your soul. Your soul has been here a lot longer than your human mind. So unfortunately, it was us doing that thing. It was our spirit. Now, the next and final step is reparation, which means we need to make good again. We need to make right. Now, this is the biggest one in Hinduism and Buddhism and all these beautiful religions that really study the laws of karma, is to go, basically, you could say it boils down to do as little harm as you can and do as much good as possible. That's really what this all boils down to. Do as little harm as you can and do as much good as possible. Somebody write that down, because it's good and I want to recall it later. Okay. That's coming from my guides. So when we try and we go through life, a very Buddhist perspective would be, yes, unfortunately, you might have to work off the karma in this life. But the best way you can do that is by stopping doing any further bad stuff in this world. And thank you, Marita, and do as much good as you can going forward. That will ensure that in the next life you don't get plagued with the karma or the law of cause and effect, or maybe your suffering ends. All right. So do as little harm as you can and do as much good as possible. This will repair the balance. I wrote here, reparation is to do whatever needs to be done to undo the harmful effects of our actions. Let's take South Africa as an example. I wasn't alive in this body during apartheid. I wasn't a contributor to slavery. And yet I'm paying for it. I'm paying for the actions of the past. Whether they were mine or not, I don't know. But the law of cause and effect doesn't just influence individuals, it influences collectives. Now, as a white person of privilege, I have a responsibility to interact with my brothers and sisters of color in a specific way that is compassionate, that allows them to have their anger, that allows them to vent and vocalize their pain. And that is a part of reparation. So remember that as spiritual beings, it's not just our one little life here that we're a part of. We're a part of a collective. And I have an opportunity every time I interact with a person who might look at me as a white male, a privileged white male, and feel anger towards me. Not because of me, but because of what I represent. I have an opportunity in that moment to try and shift that relationship or that attitude slightly through kindness, through support, through laughter, through connection, through reweaving the tapestry that was broken. And so that is a part of reparation. It's counterbalancing the imbalances of this world. You think you only came here for you. No, you are part of a collective. Every single one of us who lives in South Africa or who travels to South Africa regularly, why? Why are you called here? Why did you come here? Because you have a soul contract with these people, this place. The Americans, my God, what a contract are they going through right now? What is going on there, you know? There's a these are bigger karmic cycles that go on. This, by the way, is why the study of astrology is so helpful, because it helps us to understand cosmic cycles and trends that souls are experiencing together. When reparation speaks of charitable work, it doesn't just mean starting up a soup kitchen, okay? Charitable work could literally be that conversation that you have with somebody else in pain, and you just make them feel that little bit better, or you bring together two worlds that would have been apart normally. So it's a very humbling process, and if it's not done now, it will be done in another life. There is no escaping it. The only inescapable destiny that God has set for all spirits is perfecting themselves incessantly. It is the only destiny that we are all destined for. Every single soul is destined for progress and for growth. No soul can escape that. It is an immutable law of this universe. We're all going to pass through matric. We're all going to graduate and excel the spiritual school. Just sometimes it might take longer than others. So these were a few questions that came up over the week that some people sent me about last lecture, and also questions that I've considered. Sorry, my kitty's here and he's hungry. So here's some questions around this topic. Let me quickly call Gillian to feed him, because otherwise he's going to. All right. So, first question: if I recognize a mistake I have made, is just the recognizing of that mistake enough? Okay, is that good enough? So that is repentance, recognizing the mistake. And no, it's not enough. It is the first step. We have to clear our conscience and, sorry, not and make it right again. So all three steps. Seeing it is important, but there's more to the story. 2, why do I need to suffer to progress as a spirit? Okay, why do we have to experience trials? Why do we have to suffer to learn? It's not about suffering. It's about the fact that we grow through challenge. Challenge causes us to evolve. Challenge causes us to grow. So these trials, they actually are usually presented to us in small lessons. And if we don't learn, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until we get it. Until we get it right. Human beings learn by kicking their toes and burning their hands in the fire. That is how all living sentient beings work. When your dog is a puppy and they wee on the carpet, you say, no, no, no weeing on the carpet. And then they learn, hopefully. Human beings are like that. We learn not through, at the beginning anyway, not through wisdom, but through experience. Later on, as our spirit grows and evolves, we have the capacity to learn not through hurting ourselves. We learn not through trials. We don't have to kick our toes anymore. We have the capacity to think and to use wisdom in order to grow. It's I'll tell you personally, like when I was growing up and I used to watch all of my friends when we were in high school dating, putting themselves through these horrible things, and they fight and break up and fight and break up and fight and break up. And I would think, what is the point of that? I could already see at that stage of my life, that's not the way I want to live a relationship. But they needed to experience that at that time to learn what relationship was about for them. So obviously in previous lives, I had already gotten that. I'd already learned that. I didn't have to go through it. So later on, we don't need to kick our toes. We can see it through the eyes of wisdom. Okay. The next question. Some people are just mean. Are spirits good or bad because they were created that way? No. We are who we are now is as a result of our experiences and our level of moral, which is our spiritual development. We are all on the path of growth and learning, and all spirits are created equal and are destined for perfection. So yes, you do get lesser evolved souls, and they are causing a lot of pain, but they were not created bad or good. We are all created simple and with the potential for perfection. And we're all just at different stages of that process. The next one. Oh, that is it. So, if you have the book Initiation into Spiritism, you can read chapter 21 on this topic. I will send you these slides. I think I did send them, but I'll resend them again just in case. And then for those who are really interested in the moral development of the soul, because that's what we've learned is that spiritual growth relies on our moral and virtuous development, not through our intellectual development, through our moral development. Then the Gospel according to Spiritism is a fantastic book to start with because it goes into the teachings of one of the spiritual masters, Jesus, and looks at his teachings on spiritual morality. He was one of the great ones who taught purely the laws of morality. And it really takes apart those parts of the New Testament, especially, that we don't need to interpret through a religious lens, but we can interpret as philosophers and we can interpret as mystics. Because religion mostly is for people who are just willing to accept whatever they're told. But mystics, we are the people who want to understand deeper and have an experience for ourselves. And Jesus himself was one of the great mystics. And so this book, the spirits channeled this book to clean up the religious dogma away from Jesus' teachings. I have 10 copies of that book here. If anybody wants, let me know. You're welcome to let me know. All right. So I think that is the end of that lesson, and we actually made it on time. The This is a massive topic, all right? Trials and atonements, expiation, the clearing of the conscience, the clearing of the soul. But this is a really good introduction to it from a Spiritist perspective. Next week or next lesson, we're going to be going into why there are inequalities of wealth in the world from a spiritual perspective. And I think that's a really pertinent one to be discussing now, um, at this time in history when there is such diversity of wealth and material means in this world. So before we sign off together, I just um, I just want us to take a moment to close the eyes again. We started with prayer, so now we must come together in the collective. Just feel the connection of yourself to this group, even the people that you don't know. It's not a mistake that our spirits have gravitated together. We are a part of a soul cluster. We thank our spiritual mentors and guides for having been with us here tonight. And whenever we consider these teachings, whether it's here in person or later on in the recordings, may we really take these teachings out into the world. May we take these teachings out into our lives, and may we look at the themes of challenge, of struggle, of trials, of the clearing of our karmic slate and the unburdening of our consciences. And if we have an opportunity to help somebody else to alleviate their burdens, their pains, their pressures, their suffering, may we also be able to help them in that. May all beings be free from mental and physical suffering. May we be well and may we be happy along the road of our spiritual advancement. And may we all take care of ourselves and each other happily. Until we meet again, thank you for your time tonight, everybody. Stay blessed and take care. Good night.